Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and I am back with Brian Julius for part two of our challenge to try to get this order fulfillment measure, get ChatGPT to write this thing for us. So if you watch part one of this, you kind of I think we had some great discussions around a number of topics, but then you got to see Brian and I kind of struggle to try to get the ChatGPT o1 preview to do what we wanted. Um, and so since that time, Brian one created a reduced data set for this thing. And then he'd sent me some good advice on maybe some different ways of prompting it, which I tried out, and we'll walk you through that. But just today, O1 came out of preview and it went GA. And I think you'll be kind of shocked by what Brian and I found on just how good this thing is. So I don't know, Brian, you have any thoughts on that?
Well, and we have an even bigger gun that we didn't have to wheel out on this yet. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So okay. So what I did while Brian was creating the reduced data model, because we both thought that that was a good idea, is I went back and tried to reprompt, and you can see I'm in ChatGPT 01 preview up here, which you can't get to anymore. So I'm glad I kept this chat window open. But I said, okay, here's the BIM file, right? And then I changed the prompt up to be more, I think, more clear about what we were trying to do. So the goal is to write a measure, right? And I kind of am more prescriptive about, hey, you want to fill order number one first, and then order number two, then order number three, and I don't know. I think this is a pretty good prompt that kind of explained the entire situation. But as you can see, it's a pretty complicated problem to explain.
What I think, Greg, is as you and I were talking about, particularly after the reduced model, is we were prompting it with LIFO and FIFO in terms that implied a time element, but we didn't have a time element in that model. And so I think where it was stumbling was in trying to figure out where we had like a bunch of warehouses that had 8 units of inventory. It couldn't figure out which order, I think, to deplete the warehouses in, because there wasn't that time element. So I think kind of prompting it more clearly um kind of steered it out of the ditch that we were driving it into.
Yep. And I think that definitely you'll see that. So if I copy this code, so this is the first attempt, and you'll see, let's go ahead and create this thing, new measure. This is being kind of slow today. Well, it's probably because I have a bunch of Power BI windows open on everywhere. Okay, so if I paste this in, so you can actually see, so it actually got some of the DAX wrong. Um, and so what it's doing is it's trying to use a column. It doesn't understand that you need to nest the add columns in order to, so it's creating this cumulative quantities, STR up to previous, but then it's creating another column that's trying to use that column. You can't do that. You have to nest your add columns to get that to work. So we're gonna fix it for it. And I don't think that's the end of the world, but it's a fairly easy fix, right? We just have to end this add columns. We got the new add columns and that add columns, add the new add columns. There we go. So that measure's all fixed up. And it's already in use. That's great. Locations, Chat GPT, O1P. How about that?
And so it ended up getting pretty close. I mean, I
Yeah.
think you're able to pick out, I think, and diagnose problems that probably a lot of other people wouldn't be able to spot easily. But the fact is, it did pretty well.
Yeah, it got it. And if you notice when we do this, so this looks better, right? In terms of it actually, where before, like it was wanting to start on like the third one, and then it was, it left these two blank. It actually understands that, hey, I need to fulfill this order first, right? And it's using the biggest bins, right? It used L10, L17, has 8, L48, L15, L31. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, so it actually in that respect, it looks correct, right? I mean, that first one, where it goes off the rails, it seems like is it the second one. So it's for whatever reason, it's it's I don't know what it's doing. That's not right. So, but it got better with that prompt than we got, I think, but our last session, Brian, when we were trying to
Right.
get this thing to work. This prompt seemed to work out better for it.
And
So
that's why we put the reduced model together, was to try to kind of figure out the dynamics of what it was doing when it needed to jump warehouses to fill an order.
yeah, so then the measure is so what I think I was thinking on this when I saw this is that it must be using like partial inventory from a bunch of different locations, right, to fulfill the order. Right? It's using what I got the sense of is like, oh, maybe it's using like one, like one out of L39, one out of L2, one out of L40, right? So then I reprompted and said, the measure is very close. However, when fulfilling orders, if possible, the entire location's inventory should be used to fulfill the sales order. Once that location's inventory has been used to fulfill a sales order, that location can no longer be used to fulfill any other sales orders. So this is the code that it gave me to fix it, basically. I'm going to paste this one in, and we'll call it O1P again. And again, let's see here. Yeah, it's the same problem with the add columns. It seems like a strange thing that it doesn't know about DAX, but it's forgivable. All right, so that's that, and that's did the same thing down here. Okay. Oh, that's right. This one was weird. I was never able to get this one to quite work. That's right. So it creates the column, and then it uses that column in the var. It's like you can't really do that. I don't know what it was.
Right.
I don't know what it was thinking on this one, but it definitely the DAX was not quite right. Um, so okay, it went on. So the measure written does not work with since add columns. You cannot reference a column added in another added column within the same add columns. Anyway, I tried to explain to it what it was doing wrong. So then we can use that one. It still didn't quite get it right, but it did fix the major problem. O1P. So I fixed the problem down here. What it was, the one that was really I wasn't quite sure what it was trying to do.
And I mean, the interesting thing, one of the things that's really interesting is when you break things up by variables, what you can see, it's the same thing with M code, that as you're resolving problems and as it's iterating, it gets further and further into the code. Like you can see physically, like it progressing deeper in before it hits the errors.
Yeah. All right. So this one, I think this one was really close before I had it go off the rails on me. Okay, so this one, so here, so you can see L19, L11, L47, L35, L15. The interesting about this one is what it's doing, what I figured out that it was doing, it's using all of the eights. These are all of the eights. Even though it doesn't need all of the eights, it only needs four of them. It's using all five of the eights. And this one is using all of the sevens. And then this one uses all the sixes. Right? And again, it's like but then it reused them again. I don't know why these two were the same, but anyway, so it was like, but it's really close, right? I mean, I felt like I was making progress on this thing, like it was getting really close. So then I went down here and, okay, I said the measure is extremely close. However, I think you misunderstood. When filling orders, you measure fills in order using all locations with the same amount of, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. If an order, I tried to explain, okay, if it has 32, there are 5 locations with 8, then only 4 of those locations should be used to fill the order, right? I was trying to be very descriptive about what it needs to do. And so let's go back to here. O1P. And this time it actually came back and didn't have any errors in this syntax errors, right? I hit enter.
And this, Greg, this is exactly what I do, which is as long as it's making progress, I keep at it. You know,
Right.
that basically went, oh wow. that
It,
that was kind of
this
an
is
ominous foreshadowing. Um,
this is where I quit, Brian, because I was like,
yeah.
okay, it just totally went off the rails. I don't know what it decided to do there. So
And that's exactly what what I was gonna say is as long as it's making progress, I keep at it. And then when it either fails to make progress or just goes completely over the cliff, that's when I'll call time of death and say it failed.
yep.
Um,
So then in the meantime, so I was doing this. Brian was creating this reduced data model, and he sent that to me. And I loaded up that data model. I got my measure working in it. And really the next step is okay, we're going to try to solve this. But then O1 went live just today. And so we got the idea like, well heck, why don't I just try the same exact prompt in O1 that we did in preview and see what happens? So that's what we did. So so here I took my original prompt, which was this one way back up here. Right, I just copied it, the whole thing, right, and I pasted it into O1. Right,
just
so this,
actually just do it. Can you just do it now? Like repeat it?
yeah, I can do that. It's a long prompt. Okay, let's see. It's all right. We're in O1. Let's go new, paste it in. There it is. It's the same exact prompt. Oops, not sure what I did there. I was just trying to hit enter. There we go. Well, hopefully this repeats the same thing that happened last time, Brian.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is it will probably not repeat the exact same measure. You know, it always it there's an element of randomness and variability where you won't often get the same exact answer twice.
I love how you can see it thinking about the inventory control and all kinds of stuff. Oh, okay. So it puts it over here now. Before it would like put it within here. All right, so here it is. Copy the code. And let's take this one out. Create a new measure. All right. See, I can already tell it's probably gonna work. It's because I see logic in this measure that wasn't that the O1P never got to.
And it looks like it's checking out on syntax too.
Yeah, it definitely checked out syntax. So this is the one we added in there, and it's perfect.
Wow.
So we had a problem, Brian. I think we could legitimately say stumped, ChatGPT as far as the preview version of O1. But the production version of O1, not even the pro version, just absolutely just knocked it out of the park without
Nailed it on the first shot.
any problem whatsoever. Well, I mean, that's insane to me. I mean, how long did it take? It took 40 seconds. It took me literally probably a weekend and a half to solve that problem. And
And
it did it in 40 seconds. That's
I would be willing to bet. I would be willing to bet that the number of people worldwide who could solve that problem in DAX is no bigger than 3 digits. And it solved in 40 seconds on the first try. I mean, I don't think we're going to be writing DAX for very much longer.
I probably can't argue with you on that one. That's just crazy to me. That I mean, I can't believe just how much of a leap it was from like even the O1 preview to the production that it's I mean we fought with that thing you and I fought with that thing for an hour or better and then I fought with it for another probably hour and then you just plug the same exact prompt that you gave preview into the production version. It's just boom, it's just done. It's crazy.
Well, you want to hear the crazier thing? There's now the Pro model, which is a whole lot better than this model, um, that we have access to, and we didn't even need. It's like I think we're gonna have a hard time finding a problem hard enough to throw at O1 Pro.
This was my hardest one, Brian. This is the hardest DAX problem that I know of that I've solved. I mean, maybe I could. I didn't. It'd be because you already threw Cthulhu at it, right? You
Oh,
already
it,
did.
I mean, O1P not only crushed Cthulhu, O1P has a solution to Cthulhu that I think is genius. I mean, I would not in a million years have come up with that combination. And it was really interesting that I've been having a conversation on an M code problem that that Omid submitted yesterday that we ran through O1, and it it solved it in 11 seconds with a structure most of us had never seen before.
Huh? That's
A
crazy.
really creative list dot accumulate structure with a record structure instead of a table. And even Aditya, who is as good at M code as anybody I know, he said he has rarely ever seen that used before. And 11 seconds, it just nailed that first try.
I mean, that starts to beg the question in terms of that. Is it really? Is it just mimicking other people's code, or is it learning how to code? Right? Because if that's a pattern that's almost nobody uses, where did it learn it?
I mean, the funny thing about it is, I was talking to him about this, that, people will say, oh, AI is not reliable, it hallucinates. The interesting thing about hallucinations is you can stop hallucinations right away, which is you crank the temperature parameter down to zero, and it basically becomes a deterministic if then else model. But the problem with that is it gives you the same answer every time. And if that answer isn't what you're looking for, kind of the genius of these models is kind of the element of randomness that lets them not always take the next predicted token. It lets it vary in that probability distribution a bit. And sometimes what it pulls is a pattern that we don't ascribe meaning to, and we call that a hallucination. But sometimes what it does, it pulls a pattern that it ascribes meaning to that it's found in the data that we haven't identified yet, and it's genius. It's a combination that works that we aren't aware of. And so, just in the same way, when you ask it to, come up with company names or product names or, ideas for, a new video game or something, it will, some of the stuff it comes up with is crap, but some of it is really good. And it's the same thing with coding, is that there are times when it will use that fluctuation to show you something you've never seen before, and it works.
Yeah, I took your idea, Brian, from our last session, and you had like, hey, you have it write a custom connector for you, right? And I haven't done the custom visual yet, but I had it write a custom connector for Asana, right? And what I did is I pasted in my Discord code and said, hey, rewrite this for Asana, and it just boom did it. There was like a few tiny, really minor things that I had to fix, and all I did was point it to the Asana API documentation and some stuff like that, and it just boom, it just worked. And it even figured out, it's like I want the tasks. It figured out that, oh, tasks are part of projects, are part of workspaces, and it wrote all the code to do all the navigation stuff. Where you're in the navigator, it wrote all of that code almost perfectly. I just had to fix, like, it referred to things as ID versus GID. Okay, but other than that, once I fixed that, it just worked perfectly. And that's the worst part of that stuff, that code to write on those custom connectors. So it was just like it was amazing to me that it like, okay, it figured out all of that just from it went out and learned the documentation within, a few seconds
Yeah.
for the API and learned what the structural hierarchy was. I mean, that's
And
like,
you built that on O1P, right?
yeah, yeah.
Pop up the bar charts I sent you now, because it'll show how much better encoding the new models are even than what you used.
Those are scary charts, man.
It
Because
is
O one
scary.
P is O1P was pretty good. So
And
yeah,
that competition code force challenge, I mean, those are some elite level coding problems. And it went from what, 50 to, okay, 85, is it?
yeah,
That
78. The O1 is 78. O1 Pro mode is 86.
that's the competition math. There's the code force in the
Oh, the
middle.
code 62 to 89 to 90,
Yeah.
right? That's insane. Yeah, well, that's why when I saw these, when you sent me these, I'm like, well, I just need to try the same prompt on O1 and see if it did, it just nailed it. It's scary how good these things are becoming. It's nuts.
I'd be curious to know if you threw your connector prompt in the O1, whether it would nail it on the first shot. But
It probably
it's
would have. I
probably would.
mean,
I bet it would.
yeah, because I mean, O1P, it almost nailed it exactly. It was like one or two little minor things that I had to correct, and other than that, it was perfect. So
I mean,
yeah,
that you think about, that's going to be an amazing world when we can, any of us can write any custom connector that we want. Maybe even any custom visual.
well, that's what I mean. The next thing, Brian, I'm gonna try my hand at writing a custom visual with with it and see where it goes. I don't know if I'll be able to get to the level of like some of the true viz visuals that like the power KPI and all that sort
Yeah.
of thing. Those things are incredible. But I think I got a few ideas for some interesting interesting visuals. It'd be interesting. I've been talking with Nick Deborah, they about XRM charts, and so I'm gonna be doing that this weekend. I'm gonna be playing around with trying to create an XRM chart with native Power BI visuals. But I'm thinking like that'd be an interesting problem to throw at O1 and just say, hey, write me a Power BI custom visual to build XRM charts, and I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially, if there's good documentation about, creating the PBVIZ files, as you say, you just, and the new, the new models have like 128, thousand, context window, so you can throw big files just in without even a custom GPT, just throw it in the prompt. You can throw entire textbooks in the prompt.
Well, and there's plenty of samples. That's what I did on the custom connector. I pointed it to the GitHub repository that Microsoft has that has I just like here's some sample connectors,
Yeah.
and I know they have the same thing for like Power BI custom visuals and that. So, I'll just point it to the custom visuals and say, here's some samples. I bet it, yeah, I bet it'll do a really good job. I'm kind of interested to see.
The other thing is Luca Zavarella's book on extending Power BI with Python and R, which is an awesome book. That actually has, because he's got some tricks in there about getting around the publication of those visuals in the service. And he has where you create your own PBVIZ files with those encapsulated. And so he's got a whole chapter on how to do that. If you threw that chapter into the context window too, I bet that'd be a big help.
Oh yeah, I bet it would. It's like I don't know, man. This is crazy.
It is.
So I have a question. So this is a debate I have with my son, and it's just lighthearted kind of debates. Right, I took the position. I'm like, because he was complaining about AI generated images and how it's unethical, and because it's trained on artist, images and then recreating that. And I was kind of making some. I always like to take a contrary position, whether I believe it or not. I do that. That is truly who I am. So, and I was like pointing out, well, if somebody took a picture of the Mona Lisa and they put it up on the internet, that's Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo da Vinci's not he doesn't get he just shouldn't get a royalty off of or some kind of payment just because AI went out and scanned that image and this and that. And he's like, well, he copyrights passed for that, Dad. So we get into this whole discussion. But I eventually made the point of like nobody wants ethical AI, right? Nobody wants it because it'd be crazy expensive, right? I mean, how much are we're paying for O1? I don't know. I think it's like $9 a month or something like that. But I mean, could you imagine if they actually had to reimburse everybody that they, basically, the creative works and sort of things like. So anyway, it's a bad position to take, but that was what I ended up with. Is like nobody wants ethical AI. It'd be way too expensive.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty interesting question. I think it's a really interesting question, that probably the courts are going to, be settling out for years. But the thing it makes me think of is the Beastie Boys album, Paul's Boutique, which is like, I think one of the greatest albums ever. And that album, you could not make that now. Like that album would be so incredibly expensive to make because there's hundreds of samples. And that was, I kind of liken music sampling to what's going on with AI now, which is when hip hop started, basically people were just sampling everything and without compensating the original creators. And you got some amazing stuff, but the question is, was it fair to the creators? And the courts and the music industry determined it wasn't. And so they were then compensated, but at the same time, you lost the ability to make certain kinds of art. And I think ultimately that's going to happen here too. But the thing is, you're talking about so much money now, and the question is, when you've got OpenAI literally snapping their fingers and raising $6.6 billion, I think, in the last funding round, like just immediately of saying we need more, and 6.6 billion shows up. It's kind of like you look at what they're paying the content creators, and maybe maybe it turns out that this they can reimburse everybody. And so maybe it gets to the point where all that art and music becomes usable in a legal compensable way, and that would be awesome, because I think you know there's some people in the creative industry, like there's a guy I love his stuff, called, his name is Chad Laufer, and he was a creative art director for like TNT, did like the NBA on TNT and stuff. And when all this started, unlike a lot of artists who really resisted against it, he like dove in like completely. And the stuff he is doing, if you follow him on LinkedIn, is incredible. And so, I'm really excited about the idea that they're going to be, you know, I mean, they're kind of hacks like me who are using it to create stuff that's not terrible. And then there are people who really know what they're doing who are creating incredible stuff. And I think when, if kind of content becomes widely available and people who really know what they're doing can start using it, I think it's going to be this creative boom.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I really don't, I can see both sides of the issue because I am a content creator, right? I mean, in terms of YouTube and also the books that I write and publish through Pact, and that sort of thing. So I get, but then I really enjoy the AI stuff, and I don't want it to be crazy expensive. So it's like I'm caught between the two sides. So I don't know, but I just like arguing with my son. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny because, I've created these 5 custom GPTs that are just like rock crushers, that, like, as I say, the regex one hasn't missed a problem in 5 months now. But I don't publish them because, I respect the intellectual property of the authors. And, the information is not secure in those. But man, would I love it if, if if you know publishers like Pack, reached an agreement and were compensated, and the authors were compensated for their work, and we could share that stuff out, and kind of make these models so much better than they are now. That would be incredible.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and I know Pact has done some things along those lines. They've come out with like their position on like AI and AI content and stuff like that. But I don't think anything showed up in my royalty statements around getting paid for AI.
Well, and that's people keep asking me, when I use them and I talk about them, they're like, "Can you post them?" I'm like, I really can't. I can tell you how to do it, so you can go buy the books and pop them in your own custom GPTs. But it would be great if there was a way in which the authors and the publishers were compensated in a fair use way that we could just kind of use those publicly. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, Brian. I mean, that's you've given a lot of thought, obviously. Like I think
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that would be like, "Oh, I just copy and paste this stuff, for my electronic copy of the book, then I'll share it out with all my friends and everything." And they're not thinking through it in terms of the way you are. They're like, "Well, that custom GPT I just built is built on knowledge that an author created, and I compensated that author because I bought their book, right? And so it makes sense that you can use it, right? but sharing it out with the whole world, I agree with you on that.
yeah, and I mean, it's a really personal thing for me because I know the people who write these books now. I know you, I know Melissa, I know Rick, and it's like I don't, I mean, you hope there's kind of a general morality about it, but when it's your friends, you definitely don't want to screw these people.
Well, we appreciate that. But, yeah, I mean and it's so interesting because other times people were just like, I think it happened with a couple people's books in the pack community. Like somebody just they bought an electronic copy and just posted it online for
Yeah,
like
that's
everybody to
terrible.
see. Like come on, man. How do you not know that that's not cool?
Yeah, I hate seeing that, because it's like, when you see what goes into the creation and production of a book, I mean, it is blood, sweat, and tears. And, to kind of, just share that out, without thinking, about the person who put that effort in, to me is just unconscionable. And so, I really hope that there's kind of a reckoning in this where kind of as, societally we figure out how to deal with content and AI in a fair way. Because, AI kind of came in, and before I think content creators and publishers even knew what was happening, all this stuff got vacuumed up. And, going back to the sampling thing, it's exactly what happened. People were making records and making mixtapes and, doing it. And then it got big and everybody said, whoa, wait, like maybe this isn't a good idea. And I think the same things happen, but it's in some sense it's really hard to put the genie back in the bottle when it's done
Oh,
at this scale.
yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And who knows what's been sucked up and what hasn't been. And but it really does everybody has always said, data is king and that sort of thing. And it really ultimately I think the whole AI stuff makes that even more important. Like all the data that you've collected and all the information you have as an organization, right, now becomes incredibly valuable. Because if you can train some some LMs on that thing, then it's going to be, then it's an expert in your business and that sort of thing. And it's really a valuable asset.
Well, I mean, truly, I mean, when they talk about, data being the new oil and the new gold and stuff, even more so now, because from what I gather, the printed internet, the public printed internet has been completely vacuumed up by AI and processed. So, the old joke about you've come to the end of the internet, it's true. Like the public internet, there isn't any more to mine as far as I can tell. And where the quality of data is going to come from is it's going to come from that non-public data. And so, I think as you're seeing more and more companies competing for that proprietary data, the value of it just goes up and up and up. And, the question becomes, is synthetic data useful? for training AI models. And I don't think that issue's been resolved yet, because that, there was some indication that um, AI progress was starting to slow. And some of the theory behind that was it was because we were running out of non-synthetic data. And the interesting thing is that video and audio are not experiencing that slowdown yet because there's much more video data to process than written data. And yeah, so fascinating
Yeah.
times.
Well, it makes me think in terms of like you think about how vast the internet is and just how much information is out there. You can literally find out how to do just anything you want to do. But then, if I were to think about that in terms of the amount of non-public information stored within organizations, right? It has to like dwarf that by what? 100 times what's out there on the internet? Maybe more, maybe less. I don't
Oh,
know.
I'm sure by more.
Yeah.
They say that most companies are not taking advantage of over 90% of the data they hold. I've heard that number a lot. Even if even if even if it's wrong by half, even if there's about 45 or 50% that they're not taking advantage of, that's a gargantuan amount of information that still sits out there.
A lot of room for to grow if an AI ever gets to the singularity and can get past all the security measures and dig into all of this organizational data, then we're really in trouble.
All right, you want a little bit of nightmare fuel? Um, that the in the testing that they did of O1 and O1 Pro, you can read about it on the there's a red card section on the OpenAI site, and the the AI actually, in cases where it was violating some of the rules, it actually attempted to circumvent the shutdown of the system. And I'll get this right. I want to get this right because I'll send you the quotes out of this where they talk about it actively attempting to prevent it from being shut down.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's the other side of the I don't want ethical AI or nobody. I want the guardrails taken off. I want to see what this stuff really can do. But then until I don't want it to.
Right. Till the robot shows up at your door.
It's right.
Well, I mean, the really interesting thing is Tianyu, who does some great stuff on video. He posted a fascinating one today, which is it was a series of these ethical problems. The train track problem, with the train, the runaway train, and you have kind of two bad outcomes, and you have to make it pick which one it thinks is worse. And the interesting thing is, if we talk about kind of aligning AI with human ethics, it's like the scenarios he presented. I think there would be huge disagreement among humans as to what the ethical choice is, and so how do we align AI to quote human ethics when I don't even think we're sure what those ethical choices are. It really raises some kind of enormously difficult philosophical questions.
Yeah, that's interesting. If we can't agree as a society what the right ethical outcome is, how are we supposed to train somebody, an AI on which one it is? That's an
Yeah.
interesting thought. Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
this is
I just think it's so cool that we get to see, like, we're kind of right in the middle of this story as it's happening. Yeah. I feel like
yeah.
it's like, it's like being an extra in a movie that you have no idea how it's going to end.
Well, that's been one of the cool things I think within our general age range. That is that we kind of grew up with the PC and then the internet and all and you were always been on the forefront of all that sort of thing. I think that's been a really interesting journey, at least for me personally. Like when I was in like 1990, and first learning about the internet and sort of that sort of stuff, I was in college, and getting to mess around with all of that sort of. I've been on that kind of forefront, leading edge of that technology. I remember coming out of college and talking to people, and they were like, they're like, this whole internet thing, that's a fad, right? I'm like, no, no, it's not. It's like it's here to stay, trust me. But it's just, it's been an interesting ride so far, and AI is just the next chapter and all that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is cool in the sense that we've seen, the PC, the internet, the cloud, the smartphone, kind of all these enormous innovations. And this one to me feels different. Like the speed at which it's happening just feels so much faster than any of the others. I mean, like I think about PCs and it was like, I mean, it was a couple of years between the first person I knew who had a PC and then when like most of us had a PC, at school. Like that took a couple of years. And you know, the interesting thing is there was one that Google and this professor from Stanford started a startup, and they just both released their things where it's like it's world something AI, and Google has something called Genie, and basically from a picture it creates an entire playable world, and you know this like immersive playable world. And there was somebody who was saying we knew this was coming, but didn't think it was going to be feasible for 5 more years, and it's here.
Well, it's so. I mean, here's what I think. Like, there's a lot of people that talk about the hype cycle, right? But sometimes the hype cycle is doesn't even hype it enough. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
can anybody really say that there was too much hype around the personal computer, right? And the personal computer really didn't live up to expectations, right? Nobody can say that, right? I mean, is there really somebody that can say that there was too much hype around the internet and the internet didn't live up to expectations? Now, you can't say that either, right? I don't think there was enough hype. If I'm coming out of college and people are like, yeah, this internet thing, like no, you totally missing the boat on this. Like there wasn't enough hype around the internet.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, and that's the way AI feels to me, is that yes, there's a hype cycle around it, but you know, I think it really is going to change everything.
Uh, I mean, the thing that, that always surprises me is when people say, "Oh, when it gets good at this," it's like, I mean, you watch what we just did, it's like, it's there. Like, basically, if you're a data analyst and you write code, it's better than you. Like, unless you're one of maybe 5 or 10 people out there in the world, it's better than you already.
Yeah, when I wrote that custom connector, I mean, it took me like a week and a half to write the chapter or better on coding custom connectors in Definitive Guide to Power Query M. And and probably before that, I had sat down with and learned a ton. I'd spent probably a couple of weeks learning about custom connectors and all this other stuff. And literally, I mean, it wrote the custom connector in like under a minute. You know, so it's like it didn't. It learned everything that I did in a minute basically and spit it out, and it was almost perfect. So yeah, I agree with you on that. And it's a better Power Query M coder than I am for sure.
It's really interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine. He's been my best friend since we were 12 years old, and he used to have this thing like we get together and like listen to music and we tape each other's records and stuff. And he always talked about like how cool would it be if there was a box that had every piece of music ever created. And this is like, this is like 40 years ago we were talking about this. And it's like we were just at dinner the other day and we were joking. It's like, yeah, that's called your phone. Um, and the funny thing about it is, in some ways, that has, in at a certain level, that's remarkable. And at a certain level, I still listen to the same stuff I was listening to in high school. Because it's like it's so overwhelming. You kind of like when you can listen to anything that's ever been written, it's almost too big a question. It's like, what do you listen to? Well, I don't know. I don't know what's out there. And I don't even know what to ask it. And I think in a lot of ways, like AI is kind of becoming the same thing, that it's not about can AI do it? It's do we have the imagination to ask it the right questions?
Yeah, yeah, and it's so interesting. And that's why, like, I was talking to you, and you're like, "Well, have it write a theme file for you, Greg." I'm like, "Duh, why didn't I think of that?" Like, "Well, have it write a custom connector or a custom visual." I'm like, you know, why, why am I not, of course, those are obvious things that I should be doing. But yeah, I guess you fall into your own patterns. You don't think about it. So
Well, it's happened so fast. It's not like we've had this long amount of time to adjust to the fact that all of a sudden we can just literally dictate a wish. It's like a genie lamp now. That with um you know one now, and being able to work in voice mode, you just tell it what you want and it just pops back with it. I mean, the funny thing is, like, if you work with Claude, you can do that and it'll actually compile the code and run it for you, and it'll show you what it looks like. I mean, it's just it's mind-boggling.
we're really starting to get to the Star Trek reality, right?
Yeah.
Computer, just, I have to talk to it and tell it what I need, and it just goes and does it.
Well, if we got a minute, let me just give you that URL to just pop. Here we go. It's worldlabs.ai. Pop that in and just take a look at that.
Am I still sharing, by the way?
Yeah.
I'm gonna freak everybody out and open up another tab. World World Labs AI.
I mean, your son will go nuts on this one too. It's like, go to the blog,
All right.
generating
Oh, so
worlds.
this is what you're talking about. The input image and it creates a 3D world for you. That's insane.
And if you scroll down, it doesn't yet have, I mean, you can apply for the beta in this, but it's got a bunch of them that you can jump into here. But it's soon going to be where you just give it a picture, and there's one of them where it takes like a Van Gogh, and you can, like, basically explore the world behind that picture. It's just, and then you think about, kind of doing that instead of with your keyboard in 3D with a VR headset. I mean, this stuff's going to get crazy real fast.
That's nuts. That's really cool.
Yeah. And Google just dropped one called Genie. I think the same day or the next day.
People are like, "Hey, man, we thought this would be able to do this in 5 years from now, but
Yeah.
it's already there." That's cool.
Yeah, it's really amazing. The video stuff is just progressing. If you look back at what it looked like a year ago and what it looks like now, and you think, what is it gonna be 6 months or a year from today?
Crazy. All right, man. Well, this has been fun, Brian.
Yeah,
I don't want to suck up your entire evening, man. But this has been it's been I think it's been a good, as frustrated as I think you and I are both were after the first session. This one, I feel a lot more closure around this, and I think we got to discuss some interesting topics around all this to boot.
yeah. It's
So
just it is a fascinating time to be in this field.
no doubt about it, man. Well, I appreciate you coming back on and spending some more time with me and getting some closure on this project. So appreciate that, and hopefully we can. I'm sure we'll find another topic at some point down the road where we can have another session and talk some more.
Yeah, I can't wait. I love doing this, and we got to find a difficult enough problem to throw the $200 bazooka at.
I the only other difficult one was trim mean, and I don't think it's anywhere near as difficult. But that was another one that about I had to flop face down on my bed and just like clear the headache out trying to figure that one out. That was another difficult one, but I don't think it's anywhere near as difficult as what we just threw at it. So
We'll keep searching.
all right, man. Have a good night. I'll
You too,
talk to you
Greg.
later. Bye.